a passionate instigator and dynamic problem solver, Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, the host of the Dr. Kevin Radio Show, will be taking you outside the box, behind the curtain, and identifying the load of BS we are fed every day. And now, Dr. Kevin.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes. We are hanging out on the third Thursday of the month, and on the third Thursday of the month here on the Dr. Kevin Show, we like to do planetary influences. How are the planets in the sky influencing our life? As a reminder, when we do this show, we like to make sure you remember the planets aren't telling you what to do. They're not telling you what you can't do. They're not telling you, they're not predicting the future of exactly what's going to happen. And you need to not give your power away to them. However, planetary influences is called planetary influences because they are influencing the energies in the greater environment and in your inner environment. Identifying those influences and being able to apply them, well, the more you know about your inner astrological environment, the more it can apply. The more you can understand why maybe something that doesn't normally bother you bothers you, or maybe you'll understand a new passion, or that it's time to take care of an old problem. And somehow you just know the time is now. These are all things that can be guided. The best time, not the best time. But it doesn't tell you what to do. Nor should an astrologer, a psychic, a medical doctor, a judge, a lawyer, an Indian chief ever tell you who to be or how you get to make your personal choices in your life. I think that is the battle of the soul of America right now, as I say it. I wasn't planning on saying that. But when I said this, I was like, oh, that sounds like the battle for the soul of America. Who gets to control women's bodies, the state or women? Who gets to control who you love, the state or the individual that's doing the loving? I don't know. But we are here this week, as always, with Rob Stewart. Rob Stewart from InnerAstrology.com. No, InnerCenterAstrology.com.
That's it.
InnerCenterAstrology.com, because it was InnerCenter.org for so long, and then I'm just like, so it's InnerCenterAstrology.com.
That's right.
Rob Stewart, you think I'd know by now. Oh, well, I'm old. I have an excuse. Who is going to tell us what the lovely dance of the stars are? If you have questions, you can call in at 202-570-7057. That's 202-570-7057. You can ask questions of Rob, of myself. Just remember, the questions need to be respectful. I don't always say that on the astrology show because I don't expect to get disrespectful questions on the astrology show. Some of the other shows, well, sometimes we're going to have more heated topics than astrology. So we do like to have it respectful, though. So, again, planetary influences is Rob Stewart. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing well, Dr. Kevin. Yeah, doing well. Thank you.
Good. We are, again, heralding the change from one sun sign into another. We're tap dancing around the date that's actually going to happen. And as we know, when the sun goes through the skies and through the months, that it illuminates different parts of what's going on in the world and in our life. Now, before I ask you what our planets are dancing, whether they're doing the rumba, the samba, maybe a waltz, a little lockstep, who's doing what dance this month, remember, this is a good time to know where your chart is. To know, as Rob talks about, where this is and that is, and this is going here, that it can give you a depth of information of where you're most likely to feel it, where it's most likely to play out, where you're most likely to be able to take advantage of it or to manage it if it's something that might be a little challenging. Because astrology aspects and planets do all of that. They both invite and challenge and give you opportunities and give you warnings of what's going on. When you know your own chart, you can apply those in a much more precise way. If you don't have a chart, then you can go to innercenterastrology.org, reach out to Mr. Rob here, who joins us every month. He can do your chart for you. He can help you understand it. And then you can listen to his and my monthly conversation, and you can even call in. And you can go, hey, Rob, do you remember me? We talked yesterday. Rob goes, let me think about it. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Where's my planet? I have a memory this month? No. Anyways, and then tell you where it applies in your chart. So, Rob, first question out. You ready?
Yeah.
Do you remember me? Or is it a bad month for memory? What's going on in the sky?
What's that?
So what's going on astrologically?
Yeah.
I'm getting serious now. Maybe. Go ahead.
So, like you said, that this show, the third week of each month, this is approximately when the sun changes signs, changes from one constellation backdrop to the next. And so we have the sun entering the sign of Sagittarius on November 22nd. And Sagittarius is really about expansion, exploration, and even education. When the sun changes signs, the sun represents a central organizing function in life, an organizing principle. And as the sun changes signs, there's a different spotlight of life, and there's ways to, you might even feel these themes become more present in your life in some way, externally, internally, but likely both. And so the sun's been in Scorpio for the past 30 days. And in Scorpio, it's a very insular, depth, deep penetrating energy. And sometimes, of course, in the fall, you go inside for warmth and things like that. It's very hibernating type of energy. Now, when the sun's entering Sagittarius on November 22nd for the next 30 days or so, Sagittarius is a very, like I said, expansive, explorative energy. And it's really at the root of Sagittarius, there's something about finding a bigger perspective, breaking up routines, seeing the big picture, reconnecting with wonder, letting go of dogmatic rigidity, thinking really big. That's a Sagittarian principle. And so it's a wonderful time for all of us in our lives to reflect on what's truly important in your life. What are your principles? Principles are another Sagittarian theme. And, other things like, what's my ultimate purpose? What's important for me in life? What do I want to, what are my hopes and dreams and all those things? And so Sagittarius is really reminding us of our connection to something greater and larger than ourselves. And so these are some big themes to work with over the next month. And I do want to say, Sagittarius does speak to belief systems. And when I say belief systems, I see atheism as much of a belief system as theism. They both come from a different beliefs about the world. There's dogma can be found in any vision or perspective of the world. And in Sagittarius, there's something about exploring what are our beliefs, what is the big picture, what is our lens through which we see the world. Oftentimes people say, I'll believe it when I see it, that old expression of I'll believe it when I see it. In reality, I'm not sure that saying is true, because oftentimes I feel that our interpretations, we won't see something until we believe it to be possible. We might interpret it in a different manner. And so oftentimes what we see is informed by our belief. And Sagittarian energy, that which we're dancing in for the next 30 days or so, will sort of shine a light on that area of life, of what is it that we believe, and those themes.
Well, and since Sagittarius is a fire sign, we know that that dance is closer to a salsa or a tango, something with a little beat, something with a little passion. It's a fire sign. I always find that this particular time of Sagittarius, for me, it's a time when, if I'm not careful, I have a great expansion of the waistline. Does that count? Or maybe it's just Thanksgiving and all of those other foodie holidays.
Yeah,
it's still an expansion, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I find interesting is this is a heavy laden time when almost every major world religion has some kind of major holiday, pilgrimage, something. This is a time during these 30 days of Sagittarius, you just find, if you have one of the calendar that shows all the world religion holidays, there is something on every day from somewhere. And which is perfect for the time of Sagittarius.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. I don't know if you ever thought about it that way, but,
yeah,
you know.
It's a great point. You know, even the pilgrims and, with Thanksgiving and the whole idea behind Thanksgiving and travel. Sagittarius is about foreign lands, about exploring new horizons and things like that. So pilgrimage is a big theme.
Yeah, I missed the part in the description of Sagittarius where it says, go to new lands and then rape, pillage, and, enslave them. I missed that line in the Sagittarius quote, but anyways, what can I say? Maybe I was reading it too fast.
Yeah, valid point. Although, Sagittarian, one of the shadow sides of Sagittarius is a bit preachy, is a bit soapboxy, preaching your own point of view. So it does, there is room for some of those shadows, for sure.
Absolutely. And, this has happened a few times in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and you're bringing this up now. So, though this isn't directly related to Sagittarius, and it was happening during the time of Scorpio, but I want to speak out for people about something, which, I tend to flop in and out of a lot of social media. I do social media myself. I would never call myself an influencer, but maybe someday, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if I want to be. But, I'm an influencer in person. Maybe that's good enough. But I've seen a few times recently where people have made statements where they're interchanging atheist and deist. And as somebody who is a deist is definitely not an atheist. An agnostic is closer to an atheist than a deist. And, and then we have polytheism. And, there's lots of different out there. But this is the first time I have noticed that people are out there and making that interchange between deist and atheist. And I just want to put out to my listeners, social media is great in some ways. It's a double-edged sword. It is also something that flourishes in the energy of Sagittarius, Rob will explain why, but you know what I mean, right, Rob? To have that energy to it. But make sure what you're saying is right. Don't offend people because you're being ignorant. A deist is not an atheist. I don't have anything against atheists. Atheists have every right to exist as much as agnostics, as much as anyone else. As long as whatever your belief system isn't trying to control my life, I'm okay with it. Your pathway to heaven, hell, in between, or nowhere at all. If you're dust to dust, that's great if that's where you are. But don't try to throw out terms you don't understand. Don't be ignorant and don't offend out of your ignorance. And I'm saying ignorance because clearly, again, I've seen it in more than one place and on more than one feed. These are people that have no idea what they're talking about when they interchange things like deist and atheist. I just wanted to bring that up because you had said something about atheist, and we're going into the time of Sagittarius, which is about belief systems. So I thought, what the hell? It's appropriate.
Right on. Yeah. Yeah. Valid points. I know we're coming up to the first commercial break, so I don't want to, unless there's anything else you wanted to talk about with Sagittarius.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing a job
and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hello, and welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show. I'm here with Rob Stewart from InnerCenterAstrology.com. This is the week we do Planetary Influences, where we talk about the influences going on in the stars and the skies. And if you have a question, you can call in at 202-570-7057. As we were closing down the last segment, you asked if when the music starts playing, I don't know when the audience stops hearing us. And my producer will probably come on at some point and tell me, because he's probably told me 1,001 times. And just like butter, it slides right out in one ear and out the other. Soft butter, that is. And you asked me if I had anything to add about about Sagittarius. So, when the sun goes into your house, which is predominantly Sagittarius, being ruled by Sagittarius, it's going to shine a lot of light in that area of your life. And in that area of your life is the one that you're most likely to question your belief systems or to challenge. I always look at astrology. I always look at Sagittarius. I keep on interchanging astrology and Sagittarius. I always look at Sagittarius as it's also a time where we question institutions. We question institutional thinking, not just belief systems, but institutions as well, and this greater understanding to search for your soul and your sense of self, and what are your belief systems, and what do you think, and what is it time to shed from the institutions that you've been living within, or you were brought up with, or whatever. Is that a fair assessment, Rob?
Yeah.
So, and then if you have anything in Sagittarius that's in that house, that sun is going to at some point transit it, light it up like a little spotlight on a stage, especially because it's Sagittarius and it is a fire sign. And so it's going to bring light into that planet and what that planet is doing in that house in your life from your birth chart. And so, again, this is the power of knowing your birth chart. Like, I mean, I have Scorpio rising, but that's at 27 degrees. And I got an intercepted first house. And if you guys don't know what that is, and you don't know if you have one, then that's a good time to go to innercenterastrology.com and book an appointment with Rob. Right, Rob? Right?
Yeah.
And,
Thank you.
And that with that, I have all 30 degrees of Sagittarius in my first house. So when this sun comes into Sagittarius, it is hitting my first house, my house of self. It is illuminating myself to myself, and it can be a time of change, and it can be a time where I literally overhaul who I am within my own mind and the way that I am in the world. And as a kicker, I have my Jupiter there. And Jupiter and Sagittarius have a long-standing love affair. So they really like each other, and they create even more energy, which means I get bigger and louder and more. And now I've scared all the listening audience. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Rob?
No, that's that all makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, you bring up great points, and I mean, so the other thing I want to chat about regarding the month ahead was a number of things, but one of which is the retrogrades. We talked about this before the show briefly. But we have Mars retrograde. That went retrograde on Halloween, and it will continue retrograde motion through January 12th. And when planets are retrograde, what it basically means is that from the Earth's perspective, that planet appears as though it's moving backwards in the sky. But of course, it's not moving backwards in reality. It's just that from our perspective, it's moving backwards. Much like when you pass a car on a highway, that car appears to be moving backwards, but you're just overtaking it. So that's really what's going on astronomically. But in astrology, a retrograde planet represents a time where we're sort of revising and relooking and reevaluating these areas of life. And with Mars, it's related to our drive, how we're steering taking action in life. It's where do we resource our strength, our effort, our solar plexus, essentially. Taking action and focusing our effort and our energy. And in Gemini, that's about information. It's about perspective. It's about communication. How do I act on my thoughts? How is my thinking, how am I navigating my thinking? These types of things. Gemini is a very youthful and very playful and sort of restless energy. And so whenever there's a planet in retrograde, there is oftentimes opportunities of revisiting the past with regards to these energies. So revisiting your thinking, or how you took action on your thinking, or what data you use for your thinking and your planning and your execution. But it's a great time to sort of relook at how you communicate, Gemini, particularly with siblings. That's a big Gemini theme. But it can be experienced by this sort of data overload or information overwhelm, or even this what data do I trust? That's another big theme that can occur with Mars retrograde in Gemini. So these are some of the themes, and these will play through January 12th until Mars does go direct. And there's, let me know if you want to chime in on that, Dr. Kevin.
Well, with Mars being retrograde in Gemini, and again, if you know where your Gemini house placements are in your natal chart, it is going to tell you the area that this is most likely to be happening, that you're having that kind of reset, rewind, rethink about, maybe actions you took or didn't take even.
Yep.
That, or start to realize that there was data that was faulty, maybe assumptions that you made. It could even be a time when you found out that either you were lying to yourself or other people were lying to you when they presented you information that led to a series of actions that you now regret. That could come up in a Gemini with a Mercury, a Gemini with a Mars retrograde. And it is a time when you're more likely to go, was that my out loud voice? Did I actually say that out loud? And go, shit. Right? I mean, how do you feel about all my little additions, Rob? Make sense?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, we also, this retrograde Mars is making a square to Neptune. That's perfected on November 18th and 19th, so just Friday, Saturday. But this square has been active since late September and will continue through December within a 3 degrees square. So when Mars is square Neptune, it makes everything a bit more challenging because Neptune sort of speaks to dreams, but also illusions. With Neptune, it can oftentimes bring up when we see something that we want to see instead of the entirety of reality itself. And this aligns with this sort of Sagittarian energy that we're in. This is a time where some belief systems there's great opportunities to break free of them or to get in more information to see the picture in a more clear way. A great example of this sort of Mars squares Neptune can be thinking something was one way, but it just wasn't. It wasn't as solid as one thought. An example of that is just recently with the crypto exchange FTX. I don't know if you heard about this, but
yeah.
The CEO there is a very well liked person, young multi-billionaire, and seemingly had all his stuff together and was very well respected and very seemingly seemed very philanthropic. I can never say that word. Very giving with his money.
Philanthropist. Go ahead.
Thank you. But it turns out he was using the client's money to invest with them unknowingly, and there was no money left in the coffers, so to speak. And so this is a total thinking it's one way, it was not that way, it was something very different. And this is a classic Mars-Neptune square, particularly Mars and Gemini retrograde. So these sort of more information coming in and illusions breaking down, these are all themes.
Well, I think another example of that, which has been an active conversation in the last couple of weeks, was the big red wave tsunami that this midterm election was going to bring. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not so much.
Yeah.
That trusted sources shouldn't have been trusted. Pollsters really didn't know what they were doing. because of the changing landscape that they hadn't adjusted to properly. And a lot of people were building a lot of suppositions based on faulty information. So I think that is also,
Absolutely.
So now I am hoping that when this thing on the 18th and 19th, that it will break the spell, and maybe there'll be a large number of Trump cultists that will suddenly wake up and let go of the Kool-Aid once and for all and realize, oh, maybe I'd rather be a good human. But I don't know. Yeah, it might be too much to wish for. Go ahead. You know me. I got to get my comment in. Go ahead.
Well, so, I was looking back into Mars retrograde in Gemini, just to see the previous instances of when this was occurring. The last one I found was in 1990, November of 1990. And I was looking through the news during that period of time. And during that time, there was this sort of reverse in rhetoric. George Bush Sr. was president, and things were sort of escalating between the U.S. and Iraq. Iraq was in Kuwait. And basically, when the Mars was in retrograde in Gemini, there was this reversal and this, there was both a escalating of rhetoric, but there was also attempts at peace or talks. And the war didn't move through until after Mars went direct. I think, let's see, the data I have that Congress empowered George Bush to order an attack in November or January 11th, 1991. So that's right after Mars went direct. So it's just very interesting because hopefully maybe this is a great time where there can be more talks, more peace. Of course, there's a lot of conflict, of course, occurring internationally and also domestically. But this is a great time where there can revisit some old communications in the hope that war can be circumnavigated. So that's an interesting component of Mars retrograde in Gemini. And for whatever is going on, of course, in Ukraine and with Russia, I would expect that there likely won't be escalations physically, according to this, until after Mars goes direct, which would be in the middle of January at the earliest. But we'll see.
Now, you are talking about Mars, the god of war, right?
That's right.
Just a friendly reminder.
Yeah, it's retrograde.
Yeah.
Retrograde.
Retrograde. The guy, yeah, the god of war is retrograde. He's back in his planning room and communicating and stuff like this, so he's not out on the field going, okay. What else is going on, Mr. Rob?
All right. So Mercury and Venus, they enter Sagittarius on November 16th and 17th. So that's right now. We talked about Sagittarius and about belief systems and expansive. It's helping be big. I think mind expansion really. And with Mercury and Venus entering that Mercury speaks to our thinking process. It speaks to how we observe and perceive and take in information. And with Venus, it's about a relationship. So it's a great time for travel. It's a great time for being outgoing, being optimistic, reconnecting with optimism in your friendships and your communications, as difficult as that might be with the Mars retrograde in Gemini. But it's a great time for a sense of humor. With Venus in Sagittarius is very playful. It's very spontaneous and fun-loving. It can also be risk-taking. So again, that's sort of a shadow side of Sagittarius when risk-taking becomes too much. So yeah, that's Mercury and Venus. Do you have any thoughts about that, Dr. Kevin?
Well, I mean, it sounds like, to me, what I'm hearing is I'm suddenly going to be, for a brief period of time, funny and no longer a wallflower. I don't know if I can handle that. And all of this is going to play with my natal Jupiter. It's going to be an exciting time. No one's going to be able to stand me. Go ahead. What else?
Right. Well, so we have a new moon in Sagittarius, November 23rd. And this new moon is trining Jupiter in Pisces. And this is right when Mars is squaring Neptune as well. But the new moon is on November 23rd. That's the exact same day that Jupiter goes direct. And so Jupiter's been retrograde here for a number of months. And with Jupiter retrograde, it's been a time for us all to sort of revisit our beliefs, revisit, what's true for me, what's important, what truly matters. And when Jupiter's going direct on November 23rd on this new moon, it's an opportunity to put your sort of refined life purpose into action, to see the big picture and bring, start a new intention with aligning yourself with your principles in a way that's right for you. So it's a great time to sort of tune in and set intentions for connecting with your higher calling, connecting with your higher purpose. These are all Jupiterian and Sagittarian energies. So it's a really wonderful new moon that begins it's a wonderful new beginning, really, astrologically.
So we're going to have Jupiter going direct on the new moon.
That's right.
So
That's
you
right.
said, and
yeah,
there's the sound. And what? Go ahead.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And we'll be back after this break.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Vox Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Furman. Join me every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio for Vox Novus, the new voice.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the last segment of this, our third Thursday, also known as Planetary Influences, with none other than Rob Stewart from Inner Center Astrology.com. where we're talking about what's going on in the skies. And we have this wonderful Jupiter is going to go direct, and a new moon's going to happen at the same time, and it's going to be warm and fuzzy, and we're all going to live happily ever after. Rob, pick it up from there.
And Mars is squaring Neptune during that period of time, of course. And so, again, these, I guess, the whole theme of seeing what you want to see instead of the entirety of reality itself is in play. And so this, again, by being quiet and still and connecting with that inner calling and the inner intuition, that's the best way of navigating these energies. There's wonderful, expansive and growth and beautiful energies with this, and the potential for, standing on a soapbox on a purpose that wasn't truly what is your calling, if you know what I mean. So there's the potential for illusion is very strong, but that's what we're all arguably here in this world to do, is to break through those illusions and reconnect with truth. So yeah, these are some of the themes for the new moon.
So we thought that there were people. Go ahead.
What? Well, I was gonna say that if you think back to September 26th, this is when the sun was opposite Jupiter in its cycle, and so around September 26th, there might have been some challenges to your belief system in your own life, and ways that it showed up for you in your own life. Maybe there's something going on with friends or with your spouse or partner about different views, different beliefs, different ideas, or what your calling is, or whatever it was. There might have been some friction or opposition to your worldview in some way around September 26th. And this new moon on November 23rd is about moving forward in a way that's right for you, aligned with you and your highest truth. Any thoughts about that, Dr. Kevin? Do you recall September 26th or thereabouts and stuff occurring there?
Well, I'm actually going on my calendar back to September 26th to see if I can spark my brain. What I was going to say, however, it's interesting. I was working with the team that had flown in that were about launching in the first quarter of 2023 my new brand, my new look, my new focus. And so that whole time period was all about determining who my face in the world was going to be. So now you're telling me on what day am I going to have a what was I thinking moment?
No, it's not necessarily like that. It's just it's an opportunity to move forward with what works for you. That would have been a time, September 26th, where there might have been the greatest friction and figuring out, which way do I go. And on November 23rd, November 23rd of the new moon, it's a great opportunity for setting intentions for what you want to create and your highest principles.
Winning a very large lottery and becoming a philanthropist.
Yeah, I won't try to say that word, but yeah, that word.
Hey, but what I was going to say was, that we may have thought that we were on September 26th trying to throw pearls out to the swine, and they just didn't get it. And then on November 23rd, we realized that we were the swine that was actually trying to sell false pearls. I don't know. It's a good thing I abuse myself. I don't care if anybody else laughs. Movie. Just think, you only have to do this once a month, Rob. It's not that painful.
Yeah, no, it's so funny because I'm so tired tonight, and yeah, and it's funny with Mars in retrograde in Gemini. You know, these conversations can be a challenge sometimes. But it was a great joke, Dr. Kevin. It's a really good joke. So
continue.
Yeah. So the full moon. We have a full moon December 8th in Gemini, and it's an interesting one because the full moon is directly conjunct Mars. Mars is retrograde, of course, in Gemini, but the full moon's also trining Saturn. And so, this can be a very emotional full moon. There could be a lot of anger in the energy field, and anger isn't a bad thing. It's just about healthy outlets for anger, because of course, anger can be used in very destructive ways. Mars full moon is a great time to release some anger and to find healthy outlets for that. One of which can be, one of my favorites is journaling and just letting the ego out with it. Just letting the ego, getting those angers and those frustrations on paper and just getting it out of your system and then burning that paper. It doesn't matter if those words are absolutely true or not. It's just about getting it out, moving it, and releasing that. Because anger is a healthy energy when it's done in a healthy way. Anger arises from boundaries being encroached upon, and honoring those boundaries and having healthy outlets for anger that do not result in any destruction is very important. And so, I could see, the last time Mars was retrograde was, I believe it was in Aries back in 2020 when there was a lot of protests. And gosh, there's a lot going on back in 2020. But I could see with this full moon on December 8th, this sort of emotional energy being released, and it's a great time to work with healthy outlets for anger. But with the full moon trining Saturn, there's strength and maturity available. So there's this great ability to work with those types of emotions in a healthy way. But it is a time where you might be mindful around arguments. It's a time when arguments could really spill over. And, pent-up energy can be released during that period of time. Any thoughts on that, full moon, Dr. Phil?
It sounds like a great time for me to do a kickboxing workout.
Right on.
Just something just really, and journaling is a great idea. Journaling is a great release of anger from the mind, but depending on what you're angry about and how angry you are, don't shortchange doing something physical. And again, anger, like any other emotion, is perfectly valid, and it takes you on a journey if you allow it. If you try to shortchange the journey, it gets its pound of flesh sooner or later, trust me. So take the journey, take it fully. There's nothing wrong with getting angry. There is just inappropriate and appropriate ways to deal with your anger, ways in which can be, even in being destructive, they're constructive. And then there is that anger that is just strictly destructive. And that's the kind of anger that usually leads to either regret or jail sentences, depending on how destructive you got. But don't be afraid. If you look and the weather's going to be good, it might be a good time to go out and take a hike or do something physical. The warning here is do it in a controlled enough way that you don't try to muscle something you can, or push yourself to the point where there is a physical kickback from it. Like, you know, you can throw around a few rocks, don't try to move a mountain. The mountain didn't really want to be moved and wasn't impressed with your attempt. And then you're in bed for 6 months. The mountain wasn't going to move.
Right.
That's my thought.
Yeah, no, great point about, you know, moving the body, getting the body involved is really important. And, you know, that it could be a time where, you know, when we don't release our anger in healthy ways, it comes out in unconscious ways, like aggressive driving, like, you know, at the grocery store. I don't know. And so this is a time to be aware of that. There might be some, you know, aggressive drivers. There might be stuff in the ethers that easily perturbed energies. So, like Dr. Kevin said, use it in a healthy way and be mindful of that.
Yes. Healthy is in a safe and productive way to move your body. Unhealthy is having to move lost your temper, because they always find it in the end.
Yeah, so, you know, that's all I got on my side, Dr. Kevin. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to drill down upon or get into. But
well, you know, go ahead.
No, that's it.
So, I mean, we've had a lot of things, and I'm going to say to our listeners right now that, you know, in the third Thursday of December, we'll be doing it again. We'll be moving from Sagittarius to Capricorn or things like this. Some people don't necessarily like calling in, or they find calling in distracting from listening to the show. Do be aware that you can send something to me at Dr. Kevin at mydrkevin.com if you have something that you would like us to address astrologically. Send us an email. If you're like, you know, I really enjoy listening to the show and I don't want to stop and try to call in and then I get echo or feedback, or, you know, there's that whole delay thing that happens when you call into a live show, and I get it. It can be irritating. Doesn't mean you can't send us the question in advance if you should have a question. That, you know, obviously for this show would be an astrological question, or with any of my regular guests. As you know, the first Thursday of the month is Matt Connerton, and we tend to talk about world events and politics. So if you have questions about that you'd like to ask me and Matt, feel free again to send an email to Dr. Kevin at mydrkevin. And we'll, you know, we can read your email, we can identify you, or we can keep you as a mystery person. Just indicate in the email if you don't want to say, well, we got a question from so-and-so, or just use your first name. Whatever. We want to respect your privacy. One of the things is that to be effective in astrology, and this is just a conversation that's going to take us out, so I don't know how far we're going to get with it, but it is, you know, one of the things that people find most confusing about understanding astrology, I find, is that you seem to get contradictory information as to what's going to happen or what something means in your chart. This says you're very outgoing. This says that you're shy. These transits say this energy is going to go on and this energy is not. I want you to remember that the true power in astrology is looking at it in a synergistic way. And so even as we look at the transits in the sky, and this is why every month I make some plea, take your astrology chart out. Get your astrology chart done if you don't have it. Understand where this hit you is because something that Rob may say is you're going to find this a little irritating. It's no big deal. If you look at your chart and see where it hits you and what's going on with you, you may go, no, that's going to be a very big deal for me. And something that is not a very big deal for you is something that, or is going to be a big deal for everybody else. You're like, there was just a lot of There was a lot of fanfare and no parade over that particular aspect. And that can happen because you have to look at astrology in a synergistic way. And it all adds up to something. And I'm assuming Rob does this when he does charts for people. I know when I do charts for people that I always look at, but we have to look at the big picture. We have to look at everything going on. And yes, you're going to have internal conflicts, and those are going to be represented in the internal conflict in your astrology chart. And we all know that we have them. But who's most likely to win, and when is the one that's most likely to not win going to come in and be king for the day because of what's going on in transit? I just wanted to throw that thought out. Rob, anything you would like to add or build on?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Great points. And thanks for having me on, Dr. Kevin.
Great. And I will see you in about a month. Have a great Thanksgiving. Everybody out there, no show next week. Well, there'll be a replay. But no live show next week. Take care.
Take care.